Hey guys, what is going on? Draven here with another Metal Fan Reacts video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, I'm going to be happy to redo a lot of the videos that I missed over the weekend while I was moving. So some of these videos are going to be a little bit out of order. For example, today's video is not going to be a reaction to a music video. It's going to be a reaction to the Sabaton History Fields of Verdun Part 2. This is the one that I was supposed to do last Sunday, or excuse me, last Saturday. I wasn't able to do it. This morning, Sabaton History Channel released The Night Witches Part 2, so I'm going to get that recorded and uploaded by the weekend as well. And in different news, Tom MacDonald is releasing a new song tomorrow, so of course that means I'll have a video for you guys tomorrow with Tom MacDonald's new video, No Response. So without further ado, let's jump into Sabaton History Fields of Verdun Part 2. This is The Guns of Verdun, and let's check it out.
Early episodes of Sabaton History was covering the song Fields of Verdun.
And today, we're digging deeper into that story.
I've always commented, but I love this opening.
This is Verdun. Here, they shall not pass.
What if I tell you that one of the reasons why the French military was beaten in World War II was the Battle of Verdun, fought over 2 decades earlier? See, it was because of the experiences of the Battle of Verdun that the French military had fundamentally changed its strategies. That battle burned itself deeply into the cultural memory of France and of the Great War as a whole. Just the name Verdun invokes reverence among the French, but not of a glorious victory or of a noble defeat, but of a terrible slaughter, in which the French soldiers had prevailed by grim determination. For 10 months, beginning in the early morning hours of February 21st, 1916, when over 1,200 German heavy guns opened up in unison to engulf the whole area in fire and smoke, the bombardments would not stop. For 302 days, German and French soldiers found themselves trapped in a vicious battle for the possession of the hills and fortresses of Verdun. It would become the meat grinder, the triumph of machine over man, and it was the place where Elan went to die. The French word Elan is tricky to translate. It's a philosophical concept that there is a vital force deep within every man that pushes him onward with purpose and conviction. It was also the belief that soldiers, unshaken in their desire for victory, ready to face pain or even death without hesitation, could ultimately overcome anything the enemy could throw at them. It was a concept that was linked to the past, retroactively attributed to the armies of...
I've mentioned this before, and I do apologize. I try not to pause too much with the historical channels, only because the videos are super long, and I don't want to make my video even longer by pausing. But some of these ones that are edited with these like these paintings, they're so cool. Like, I love looking at this photo. There's so much going on in this photo. There's so much to look at, and I'm just curious how historically accurate the uniforms are, the swords are. It's weird that they're shaped going upwards, but I'm told that there's a purpose to that. That it's like if they stab someone and then they pull it out, it causes a bigger hole, and it has more chance of like killing them, I guess. I'm not too sure if that's true or not, but it's just, I love looking at it. It's so sick.
Of Napoleon Bonaparte. Putting their trust in France's greatest commander, long lines of foot soldiers marched fearlessly into the musket fire of their adversaries, unfazed by the cannonballs tearing into their ranks. As long as they kept their faith, they would be victorious over the tools of the enemy. That was indeed a widespread belief in the French officer corps as the Great War began. That fixation on the old, glorious Napoleonic era was not just embodied in the brightly colored, armored and plumed cuirassiers that rode out to battle in August 1914. Most of the French battlefield doctrines revolved around the rapid deployment of the French 75, an excellent rapid-firing light artillery piece that was expected to dominate the battlefield. Its batteries would be close to the front, supporting the rapid advance of the French infantry, and together they would achieve a quick, decisive victory. The idea of sitting back and shooting at the enemy from afar was never really accepted, as everything was centered on an offensive push. Heavy artillery was considered useful only in siege warfare against fortresses. French pre-war high command, however, judged fortresses to be a thing of the past, and obsolete in the face of modern high-explosive shells. The reality of Great War trench warfare proved them all dramatically wrong, as the German heavy guns obliterated the French field positions with unparalleled force in the early stages of Verdun, the French were still trying to catch up with production.
This is
It
so
was
much
the
information.
durability
It's
of
just
the
like-
fortresses and the unrelenting defensive fire of the field guns and the infantry that stemmed the tide against the German attackers. Despite the German heavy artillery dominating the area through its sheer firepower, the French kept the enemy from breaking through. Consequently, Verdun proved not to be the war-deciding battle the Germans had hoped for. It would be a battle of attrition instead. Both the German and the French commanders soon spoke about...
So like I mentioned, guys, I do my best not to pause it. I try not to talk over it too much. I know I'm saying I don't pause it as I'm pausing it. So it's one of those awkward scenarios where, you know, when you try to do a reaction to something, but there's so much story being told. And Indy Idell does such a great job talking about what's going on that I'm sitting there just like, I'm just entranced listening. Like, I'm not thinking, you know, I'm just listening. So it's hard to have a reaction to it. So I do apologize that, you know, but I do my best to have a reaction to some of it. It's just sometimes it's really hard.
how they would bleed the enemy dry, or how one side would eventually
This is the
outkill
dead
the other.
person right
It
there.
would
That's
be
gnarly.
only a matter
Holy
of
crap.
time. A 100 years earlier, Napoleon would have had to stand on a nearby hill to overlook the battle in person, as well-timed orders decided victory or defeat. Now there was enough time for generals far away to lean over their large maps with markers in hand and make plans for weeks ahead of time. The war of attrition was fought systematically and methodically, as mathematicians calculated the most effective killing zones of the heavy guns. Verdun made it clear that the war was fought not only by its soldiers, but by its scientists and its factories as well. The side that gave their guns slightly better range, made their explosives slightly more devastating, or supplied the larger calibers quicker than the other, controlled the flow of battle. In 1914, they had expected that the whole French arsenal needed 13,600 shells a day to keep the 75s operational. By 1916, the number had risen to 77,000. And by then, they were also building and supplying heavy guns and howitzers. In the 10 months of the Battle of Verdun, over 60 million shells would rain down over the battlefield.
Jesus.
That's like 6 tons for every meter of the front. Even if Napoleon could have looked over Verdun, what was there for him to see? Crater after crater in a barren wasteland, hidden by smoke and gas so thick that it sometimes blotted out the sun. If he was lucky, he would have seen men, but not those armies of old marching in rows in their bright red and blue uniforms, but small groups of nervous men covered in dirt and mud who pressed themselves to the ground. And it didn't matter what Napoleon would have said to them, he could not have made himself heard anyway. The constant noise of detonating explosives, of rumbling mortars, grinding gears, barking machine guns, and whistling mines drowned out every spoken word. It was an inhuman concert of guns that played songs of destruction. The Germans called it Trommelfeuer because it sounded like smashing the hide of drums for hours and hours on end without stopping. In quiet moments, the veterans were able to distinguish the size of the incoming shells by the sounds that they made in the air. A small one sounded different from a large caliber shell. And they soon knew when and where they had to make the split-second decision to dive for cover. The fumes and odors of spent gunpowder, of chemicals like ammonia and chlorine, of charred wood and decaying corpses soon made their way into the tunnels and dugouts where the soldiers spent their days. Here they huddled together, fearing asphyxiation or entombment. As incoming projectiles trembled the earth above them, whole villages had simply disappeared, blasted off the earth, and woods were reduced to skeletal remains. The same fate awaited the men unlucky enough to be caught out in the open.
It's so crazy to like see the view of some of these soldiers like looking at the fields with all the broken trees and stuff. 1917, which is a movie that I really like that came out recently, does such a great job depicting World War I. If you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, go check out 1917.
It was this inhumanity this nightmarish hell that gave Verdun such a lasting effect on the cultural history of the Great War. It was the intensity of the conflict, the force of mechanical warfare pitted against fragile humanity. For decades, the veterans of Verdun declared that millions must have died here, that nothing could compare to the destruction they endured. It was the capital of death, the slaughterhouse, the bone mill. In reality, in the 10 months of battle, the French army suffered approximately 375,000 casualties. In contrast to that, from just August to November 1914, the War of Maneuver had cost the French 850,000 casualties.
It's just so crazy.
In a weird paradox, the War of Machines had actually saved lives. So more and more men were pulled from the infantry and instead assigned to the artillery regiments or the aviation corps. In June 1916, the French reduced their infantry battalions from 4 to 3 companies, effectively reducing their size from 1,000 to 750 men each. More firepower was emphasized, not numbers, and the now smaller infantry detachments were simply upgraded with the blessings of the machine god. More mortars, more grenade launchers, more machine guns, more automatic rifles. No one mentioned Elan anymore. Even the smallest infantry attacks were not to be undertaken without adequate artillery support.
Makes sense why this
Verdun
movie
was
title is
really
called
the
Guns of
moment
Verdun.
where the French military reversed their
That's
thinking.
so gnarly.
Speed was now of secondary importance, as men could not outrun the thunder of guns. Instead, the soldiers were suddenly encouraged to take their time, to remain in smaller but cohesive groups, and only to move under the cover of heavy artillery. Napoleon's offensives were now finally a thing of the past. Of course, this change took time to become overall dogma, and the disaster of the French Nivelle offensive a year later showed that lives were still easily spent on the battlefield. But the overall idea that machines and artillery were to ultimately prevent casualties while inflicting more on the enemy began to manifest itself. The shadow of the Great War was long, and the lessons of Verdun had changed French military thinking from the ground up. Waterloo had once lasted 10 hours, Verdun 10 months. Like Verdun, the next war was expected to be a long one as well, ending by a victory through attrition. So defenses were built. The Maginot Line was actually an entire defense system running from the Channel to the Mediterranean and beyond, named after André Maginot, who had been severely wounded in the War of Movement in November 1914 near Verdun. It was to protect France from such a fate once more. On the more open ground of the littoral and northern France, it had fewer constructions, because fighting a war of motion on that ground would be suicidal for the attackers. Further east along the borders with Germany and Italy, it featured a mutually supporting line of forts, casemates, and bunkers designed with Verdun in mind, with static mechanical war in mind. But it gave them a false sense of security. For the Germans embraced the ideas of speed and quick battlefield maneuvers.
I don't think, if I recall correctly, that wall didn't do jack crap for them.
No one could have foreseen the future, of course. But the Verdun mindset, on which many of the French decisions of World War II were based, would have serious consequences.
And the music video for this song is amazing too. I've done a reaction to it somewhere. I have like 120 reaction videos right now for Sabaton. Kind of crazy. Like I said, if you guys haven't yet, check out 1917. It's done really well.
So, Pat, why are we digging deeper into Fields of Verdun?
There's obviously a lot more to tell.
Sure.
First of all, it's very, very massive battle. How many episodes did you cover it in before?
Well, it lasted, what, 301 days? At the time, it was the longest continuous battle, as far as I know it still is, longest battle in history that was not a siege, because it was a continuous battle.
So you covered it in a lot of
every
episodes.
Single week, week after week, from February, I was going to say 1916, but February 2016 until December 2016, and then the aftermath you have to talk about too.
Yeah, that's true. So and there is another story to it. I mean, when we did...
I'm curious I know that you guys have mentioned that they've partnered with War of Tanks and World of War Tanks. Wow, World of Tanks and World of Warships. But I'm curious why, for this particular song, they have tanks. Does anyone know if World of Tanks did anything with the Fields of Verdun? Let me know in the comments, because I do not know.
The first episode, we
Yeah.
had no emotions. It was brand new for us.
Yeah.
We didn't know much about the song at all. It was actually so new that we barely had felt to play it.
Right.
And but this song, we had an idea that okay, it will be one of the singles of the album, and it should be one of the leading songs, and the battle is one of the leading stories of the whole album.
Sure.
So we were like, let's do something more, and that's when we started to talk, about we should do something on location.
Ooh.
We should go together.
That's
and
cool looking.
we wanted to present the new album to media
Yeah.
in a place where mattered to the album. So we actually went together down to Verdun in France, and we had some
Whoa.
great times there.
Oh, yeah,
we,
absolutely.
we were together with about 80 different journalists from
Yeah.
around the world presenting the new album,
Yeah.
and we were also shooting some on location, which
Yeah.
was our
Oh,
first
that's
time.
awesome.
We were like in a different.
I didn't realize
location
that.
than
Where's
on the
where's
Bavarian
that? Where's that
studio.
video?
Yeah, no, that was cool. That was a great trip, and then you really did get to. I've been to Verdun before with the Great War, but you guys did get to, like, when you go to like Fleury and when you walk around like the blasted landscape, it's
It's something unbelievable
Yeah.
that you told us before what we're gonna feel when we get there, and
Yeah.
we felt it for
Yeah.
sure.
If you really want to remember it properly, I mean, it'll change your perspective when you see. I mean, can we see some pictures of like the landscape? It's like the
Ooh.
moon, but covered with grass, basically.
Whoa.
But that part of France, that's the least populated part of France, that northeast part. And so it's desolate, but it's also beautiful. Verdun, the town, is a beautiful
Yeah,
town.
it is.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place to really
Kind of
understand
creepy looking, but cool at
your
the same
history
time.
and our history, even if you're not French, American, or German, or British. But it did very much shape the world in which we live.
Perhaps, or most likely, one day
it's on the-
Sabaton's gonna return to Verdun, and
I'd love to go back with you because
and
It's
do
a-
something there. We already had the idea. We tried to make a concert in Verdun when we had all the journalists there. We
Yeah.
tried to make it, but it was basically it's a little bit tricky place to do a concert in, and it's not the normal city that you would normally go to, but we really wanted to make it there, and it was a
Excuse
little
me.
bit tricky to explain before announcing what the new album is
Oh,
going to
yeah,
be
of
like.
course, yeah.
To talk to the agents, like, we want to do a concert in Verdun,
Yeah.
and they're like, why would you want to play in Verdun when you can play in
How could they
another
not
big
guess
city?
that? How could they not guess what it's going to be?
It's a great music video, but I need to go find that video of them in Verdun because that's really cool. And I need to try to convince Indy
Yeah,
Nadell to go
that's
to
it for this week's episode.
But we will see you next week on Sabaton History.
the veterans area over there in Washington, D.C.
We really need your support.
I really need your
Become
support.
a patron, subscribe, click the little bell.
So that was a lot of great information there for Fields of Verdun Part 2, the Guns of Verdun, and it's talking about basically how they changed the mindset of, instead of getting more soldiers out on the field, they repurposed the resources and got more guns, bigger guns, larger guns, more powerful guns. And it's crazy to think that what Indiana Adele was saying, like every meter of land, they dropped 6 tons of bombs. Like that's how much it equated to from when they dropped like the 600,000 tons of bombs or something. Like that's just an insane amount of hardware to think about. And then when they were showing pictures of Verdun, it's still like cratered out and stuff like that. I'm like, that's just absolutely insane. But I do appreciate you guys sticking with us. I know it's a longer video. Like I said, a new video is going to be out tomorrow, Tom McDonald, and then over the weekend will be the Sabaton history stuff. And I will hopefully get more video reactions out to you. Let me know in the comment section what I should react to next. I'm pretty much out of Sabaton songs, so let me know if there's another band you think I should check out. Anyway, guys, you have yourself a wonderful day and a great weekend. Wash your hands, stay safe, and I'll check you later. Peace.